Continuing with the prayers of Queen Kunti. We made some good progress so far. We've covered verses 18 through 24. Not bad. 24 was a long one, wasn't it? All those stories from Mahabharata. I thought of another one that I have an image for, but who was Drishtadumna? No? Drupad. Drupad. Little history. Mahabharata. You like Mahabharata histories, right? Yes. When they were little boys, Drupad, who was a king, and Drona, who was a Brahmana, or prince from a royal family, and Drona, who was a Brahmana, they went to school together. And although Drona was a Brahmana, he had an interest in military skill. So their teacher sent them to another teacher. Now this part is a little foggy in my memory, but Parshuram had a policy that he would train Brahmanas, but he wouldn't train Kshatriyas in military skill. So Parshuram trained Drona, so Drona was so powerful, and he wouldn't train Drupad, the prince. And they had some dispute, and the Brahmana made some insulting remarks to Drupad. Now, Drupad wasn't the most elevated person because he got in a get-back mood towards the insulting person. So as a king, Drupad, there's more detail, but Drupad engaged some Brahmanas to create a son that would be capable of killing Drona, because Drona was really powerful. So he did a yajna, and from the fire of the yajna came Drishtadumna, who by intention was meant to kill Drona. And whoops, by the same time came a girl, Drishtadumna, and the girl was then given the name Draupadi, came out of the same yajna. So Drishtadumna and Draupadi were brother and sister. They came out of a fire, arranged by Drona, Drupad, with the get-back mentality of my son should kill Drona. And it was known, it wasn't a secret. And Drishtadumna ended up being on the side of the Pandavas. And that's when Drona dropped his weapons, hearing that his son, Ashvatthama, was dead, he could no longer, he was a little attached to the bodily conception of life, and he no longer had the urge to fight. And that's at that moment when Drishtadumna came and chopped him, which shouldn't have been done because he had no weapons in his hand. So it was a violation of Kshatriya codes, but he did it anyways. And that was a big discouragement to the Kauravas when their commander-in-chief, Drona, who was the replacement for Bhishma, was killed. And that was from yesterday. there's details that it would take a long time to narrate. So let's do a little summary, 2 slides. You saw this slide before, that what we've covered so far. Strong emphasis in her prayers, humility. Strong emphasis in her prayers, the distinction between bhakti and gyan, and why is bhakti superior and why is gyan, while it's valuable, it's incomplete without bhakti. Or gyan is made complete with bhakti. Or without bhakti, gyan is incomplete. We heard a number of expressions, including this one, about the javanika, the curtain of Maya that conceals Krishna from the Gyanis and everybody else. So the curtain of Maya does not allow persons who are not bhaktas to understand the inconceivable nature of Krishna. And then she gave examples and examples and examples of the inconceivableness of Krishna. And we also heard as a principle in those verses how Krishna protects those who have him as their only shelter. And this was a point that we spoke about a nice number of times because it's an important part of her prayers. Exclusive shelter, no other shelter, those 2. And that this nice sign, the contradictory, apparently contradictory, irreconcilable, inconceivable aspects of the one Supreme Person. He's within everything and outside of everything, etc. Because in Krishna all contradictory qualities are reconciled. That's his absolute nature. So that's a little summary, mini summary. And now we're ready for the next set of prayers, starting with text 25. And I don't think we're going to finish because it goes to text 42. But you'll probably be inspired to go forward yourselves if you haven't already. Here's text 25. This first word, vipada, vipada, vi means, very, and pada means it's calamity, serious calamities. So here she goes. She's asking for calamities. What? Apunar, not again. Puna is again, and apunar means not again. Bhava darshanam, bhava is material existence. Bhava darshanam. We will no longer see repeated birth and death by seeing you. Vipada. So the calamities, her experience was when there were calamities, Krishna made an appearance and helped them. Sometimes it wasn't, he physically appeared, but they felt Krishna's presence and they were protected. So because of if it takes calamities, then let the calamities come. because we'll see you, and when we see you, we'll no longer see repeated birth and death. Okay, so there's vipada, means calamities, and this word this world is such a place. It's a place where there is danger in every step. Now it says here to read the purport, but I'm not going to read the purport. Would you? Somebody want to find it on your nice handheld device? And you can read the purport in a moment. I'll go forward and then you can read the purport when you find it. You found it? Yes? Can you come near the microphone? Because the cable is short. Yes, please, just the purport, please. Just try.
Generally, the distressed, the needy, the intelligent, and the inquisitive, who have performed some pious activities, worship or begin to worship the Lord. Others who are striving with misdeeds only, regardless of status, cannot approach the Supreme due to being misled by the illusory energy. Therefore, for a pious person, if there is some calamity, there is no other alternative than to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Constantly remembering the lotus feet of the Lord means preparing for liberation from birth and death. Therefore, even though there are so-called calamities, they are welcome because they give us an opportunity to remember the Lord, which means liberation. One who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are accepted as the most suitable boat for crossing the ocean of nescience, can achieve liberation as easily as one leaps over the holes made by the hoofs of a calf. Such persons are meant to reside in the abode of the Lord, and they have nothing to do with a place where there is danger in every step. This material world is certified by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita as a dangerous place full of calamities. Less intelligent persons prepare plans to adjust to those calamities without knowing that the nature of this place is itself full of calamities. They have no information of the abode of the Lord, which is full of bliss and without trace of calamity. The duty of the sane person, therefore, is to be undisturbed by worldly calamities, which are sure to happen in all circumstances. Suffering all sorts of unavoidable misfortunes, one should make progress in spiritual realization because that is the mission of human life. The spirit soul is transcendental to all material calamities. Therefore, the so-called calamities are called false. A man may see a tiger swallowing him in a dream, and he may cry for this calamity. Actually, there is no tiger and there is no suffering. It is simply a case of dreams. In the same way, all calamities of life are said to be dreams. If someone is lucky enough to get in contact with the Lord by devotional service, it is all gain. Contact with the Lord by any one of the 9 devotional services is always a forward step on the path going back to Godhead.
As you're hearing the verse or the purport, as I was hearing, I was remembering a verse I was expecting Prabhupada to quote it. It's from the prayers of Lord Brahma after he offended Krishna. Brahma offended Krishna by stealing the calves and cowherd boys and putting them in the cave and went back to see what was Krishna going to do. You know the pastime, right? Yes, everyone knows the pastime. Okay. So when Krishna did what Krishna did, then he offered prayers. And one of those prayers begins, Tat te nukampam susamikshamano. Celebrated verse. I'm surprised Prabhupada didn't cite it in this purport. Is in essence what that prayer is saying is, I made a big offense. I'm expecting a reaction for that big offense. And I'm ready to accept the reaction for that big offense, whatever may come my way, because of my big offense. So he's not pleading to Krishna, please give me a light sentence. He's not asking Krishna, please forgive me. He's saying, rather, whatever may come because of my mistake, let it come. And as it's coming, let my mind not budge an inch from remembrance of your lotus feet, which is what this purport is saying, the verse in purport is saying. So when calamities come, it's due to something back there. I mean, it may be some special mercy where Krishna is taking you by the heels and turning you upside down and shaking you, and it's just to give you a nice sensation of having only his shelter. But that's special. Otherwise, it's something back there, and something's coming your way that's due to something back there. And I'm even Lord Brahma, what to speak of little us, I accept it because it's purification for something that's back there, something, some mistake, some wrongdoing, something, and let my mind not budge an inch, which is Queen Kunti's mood also. Here's a little reference. We mentioned it already. But in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, part 1, Narada is on a quest. You can say it's one of those quest literatures. And the quest, on behalf of other Brahmana sages, is who is the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Lord? So he goes from one Vaishnav to another Vaishnav to another Vaishnav, and they say, no, not me. Here's my disqualification. But over there's a qualified person. So he goes to the qualified person. So one of the qualified persons he goes to is that he visits the Pandavas in Hastinapur. And when he goes to Hastinapur, much to his surprise, they're having a Pandava conference, plotting what's the next calamity. Similar to Kunti, let the calamities come again, vipada, puna pana, again and again. Because their experience, her experience, their experience, when the calamities are resolved, Krishna departs. And when calamities come, Krishna appears. So which would we rather have? No calamities and Krishna's gone? Or calamities and Krishna comes? That's the message, at least from Kunti's prayer and also from Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Quote, Kunti speaking, "These dangers are a great blessing to me, O Guru of the universe. To give benefit to us, you destroy unsteadiness caused by intoxication with material comfort by giving the ointment of dangers, vipada, arising out of your mercy. Though those dangers, the pronoun is yad, we can see you. Through those dangers, we can see you. By seeing you, we no longer see the sufferings of material existence." Some of you like reading the Bhagavatam, and those of you that like reading the Bhagavatam, there's a nice story in the 11th canto. It's a story that's told by Krishna to Uddhava, and it's a whole chapter. The Avanti Brahman story, it's called. And it in summary, it's a whole chapter, but it goes like this. Once upon a time, long ago, there was a Brahmana from the city of Avantipur. And he had a character like this. He was very wealthy, and he was very miserly. And he was even very miserly with his family. And that wasn't good, but he went on with it anyways. And there was some resentment from his family because he wasn't maintaining them properly. And at the same time, he was just wanting more and more prosperity. So as fate would have it, something happened. He lost everything. And when he lost everything, he went to his family for their compassion, and they didn't give compassion. He became a mendicant because he didn't have any other means to maintain himself, and people mistreated him because they thought, you're a cheater. You have all this wealth and you're coming before us as a mendicant? Ha! And so they spat in his begging bowl, and they, whatever he did have in his begging bowl, they'd hit the bottom of the begging bowl and go flying. And they were saying insulting things, and it's so on and so on. He was suffering and suffering and suffering. So then came the whole monologue where he's talking to himself or contemplating, why did this happen? He goes through multiple material causes of why suffering might happen, and then he rules them out because of this and because of that and because of that. And then his conclusion is, it's simply the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Because back there, I was not properly situated. And I treated others with disrespect because I wasn't properly situated. And now I'm getting back disrespect. I mean, it's a simpler message, but that's the essence of the Avanti Brahman story. So bad deeds come back to you. And good deeds come back to you. And transcendentalists don't bother with good deeds, bad deeds, or the reactions of good deeds, bad deeds. What do they stay focused on? Same as Kunti, same as this message here. Let her, let my mind stay fixed upon you. Whatever obstacles come in life, whatever calamities may come in life, let my mind stay fixed on you. And if you decide to come when there's a calamity, good fortune. That was text 25, the Vipada verse, celebrated verse in her prayers. Now comes another celebrated verse. There's 4 fruits of piety enlisted in the first line. Good birth, Aishvarya, opulence, Shruta, good education, Shri, beauty. These 4 things are standard fruits of piety. And she's saying, as long as one is interested, she's saying the negative, that one who still has an aspiration for those 4 things, fruits of piety, they're not going to take full shelter of you. That last line, akinchana gotra, those who have akinchana, they have no aspiration for the fruits of piety, they can take full shelter of you. Now, many people engage in religious activity, theistic conduct, because it's for, the mode of goodness is it's good to be good. It's good to be pious, it's good to be charitable, it's good to be kind, it's good to be good. And there's an expectation. What's that? There's going to be a good reaction from this good behavior, and the good reaction is these 4 things. There's fruit to living in one's life in the quality of goodness. So Kunti is saying here, a person, even having those aspirations, because it's not just a person in goodness, supposing there's a person in passion, they may engage in sacrifice, they may engage in rituals or religious functions or something or austerities or something, so they can get something. So Kunti is saying here, as long as one has those aspirations, they can't feelingly take shelter of you. But those who have no such aspirations, they can feelingly take shelter of you, whether there's a calamity or not. Okay, here comes the verse. Pause. My Lord, your Lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are akinchana gotram, materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feelings. So take a look at the second line, because we're going to go through the word for word and the second line. Edamana madak puman. So puman means the living being, and mada means mad or intoxicated, and edamana means they become progressively, increasingly mada. Those who are after those four things. And, who's not after those four things? So those four things, striving to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4, makes one progressively mad. So here's the word for word. Edamana, progressively increasing, mada, madness or intoxication, puman. So the advocacy, another way of saying the same thing, the advocacy of the Srimad Bhagavatam in general is the path of progressively becoming more involved in spirit and less involved in matter. And the flip is pravriti, path of sense enjoyment. So there's 90% of the Vedas, that's a big percentage, deals with procedures for people to become better sense enjoyers, or by piety to become situated in a higher enjoying position, and that's the hook or the lure for such people. Generally speaking, there's exception, but that's the rule. Pravriti marg, the path of progressive sense enjoyment, and the Bhagavatam is on the flip side. It's nivriti, the path of renunciation. No, nivriti doesn't mean chuck it, like throw it away. It may mean that, it may not mean that. That's for example, Maharaj Yudhisthira didn't chuck it. He didn't throw it away. Ambarish Maharaj was a great king the description for both Yudhisthira and Ambarish is they had opulence that surpassed the opulence of heaven, and they didn't care for it at all. They didn't care for it at all doesn't mean they threw it away. It means they weren't attracted to it for the idea of becoming enjoyers of it. Rather, they attracted to the personality of Godhead. Maharaj Ambarish, every morning for king of the world, was engaged in worship of his Krishna deity and other religious activities. And then he'd go into the royal assembly and do his thing. But that his attachment was not to the opulence of his kingdom or being the ruler, the Ishvara, the controller of his kingdom. He was doing service. So that's nivritti. And the nivritti may mean one is a renunciate, a tyagi, an austere person, brahmachari or sannyasi or something, by social circumstance, or they may be a householder, or they may be a king. That's fine. And respectable parentage may be something that someone is hankering for, from this activities in this life to in the next life to become something, to be born in a family that's respected by others. Or they may want in this life or the next life great opulence. Or they may want in this life or the next life high education. Or they may want bodily beauty. I don't know too much about her, but there was a queen in Egypt. She was recognized as the icon of beauty in this world. So some persons may want to do that. And they may not even wait till their next life and try to decorate themselves cosmetically or one way or another way to make themselves appear to be beautiful. So those are 4 religious motivators for people that are on the path of pravritti, marg. However, the teaching of the Bhagavatam, and here in Kunti, there isn't really security in these attainments. In fact, they're false shelters, and having a false shelter is a danger, because now you see it, now you don't. Whoops. That false shelter just went away. And my so-called security and happiness also went away. And boo-hoo. It's calamity. There's sadness that doesn't find any shelter. So in Queen Kunti's verse, Abhidatum means to say the names of the Lord. Isn't that nice? Abhidatum vai, Twamakinchana Gochara. So that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message and his mission, and it's non-different than the Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's just say it this way. This is Jiva Goswami, one of my heroes. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Verse, the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's a one-to-one match. If you want to know the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, read Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you want to know the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, become familiar with the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, because they're one and the same. Last verse for this morning. There you see the word akinchana again. And instead of saying akinchana gocharam, it's akinchana vitaya. But same import, same essence. So she's offering obeisances, nama, unto Krishna, who is the property of the akinchana vitaya folks. There's the word nivritti again. Nivritta, guna vrittaya. Then the third line, atmarama. You know the word atmarama. Atmarama, one is finding Rama within the self, self-satisfied. And distinct from the Kaivalya, the monists. So here's the verse. Atmaramaya Shantaya. Namaha, my obeisances are unto you, Krishna, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are the master of the monists. You recognize the picture, the painting? King Indradumna was cursed to become an elephant. He became an elephant, but he became the king of elephants. And as he was the king of elephants, he was bathing one day in a lake. And while he was bathing in the lake, a crocodile came and chomped on his leg. And there was a big battle. And 100 years, it's a long time to have a battle. The crocodile wasn't becoming weakened. He was becoming weakened, and he realized, I'm finished. And in that desperate calamity situation, his mind remembered his previous life as King Indradumna, and he began reciting some stotras or prayers that he had learned and recited regularly. It's called mantra upasana. Yesterday there was some discussion about mantra. Upasana means worship. Mantra upasana is a way of worshiping the Supreme through mantra. And if it's done from the heart, not just, mechanically, as it is done from the heart, it goes deep. And it went so deep with King Indradumna that even in his next life, he was able to recall those mantras and worship the Supreme Lord through his mantra upasana from his previous life. In hearing the prayers of the elephant, Lord Vishnu came and rescued him. When the elephant, Gajendra, Gaja means elephant, Indra means king. As the king of elephants, Gajendra, saw Lord Vishnu descending on his Garuda carrier, with his trunk, he plucked a lotus and offered the lotus because he wasn't able to do too much of anything else. And the Lord accepted his lotus and protected him. Lord Vishnu took his Sudarshan chakra, chopped the head of the crocodile. The crocodile's soul went in the air and achieved liberation, and Gajendra achieved liberation. And they all lived happily ever after. So back to the verse, Kaivalya Pataya, you see, the bottom line, he's the master of the monists. Kaivalya is a word that the impersonalists like a lot. Absolute monism. Nothing but monism, Kaivalya, absolute monism. And there are monists that aren't devotees, and while they're materially impoverished, they're hankering for something that's not, they're hankering for a kind of liberation that's just a negation of material. They're not at the spiritual plane yet, and Krishna is the master of such people. A living being is finished as soon as there's nothing to possess. So they can't be possession less or desire less, no desire, no possessions. Therefore, a living being cannot be, in the real sense of the term, a renouncer, because you can give up something that doesn't belong to you. Great. Recognizing what does belong to, that's complete renunciation. Here's a nice restatement of the same thing, having to do with the opulence of Maharaj Yudhisthira from the third canto. When Maharaj Yudhisthira was ruling his kingdom with the help of Lord Krishna and Arjuna, the opulence of his kingdom surpassed all imaginations of the opulence of the kingdom of heaven, and he wasn't attached because he was attached to Krishna. And I already mentioned Maharaj Ambarish, same thing. He achieved inexhaustible, unlimited opulence and prosperity on earth. But his attention didn't go to the prosperity. His attention went, as the painting is showing, to his deity of Krishna, because he was a Krishna Bhakta. And it's not just he did some rituals, he had deep, deep, deep attachment to Krishna and his Krishna deity, along with his attachment to Krishna. So we discussed these two terms, pravritti and nivritti, and it requires to move along the path of nivritti. It requires one understands what's not wanted. So having material opulence is something, and being the enjoyer of the material opulence is something not wanted. But supposing you have material opulence, supposing you can sing nicely, supposing you can cook nicely, supposing you can something nicely, that's a material opulence. So we don't throw it away. We use it in Krishna's service. Here's a nice lesson. It came up last weekend, so I'm sharing it with you because it's a nice lesson. 1971, Prabhupada is in London. And in 1971, this is a time when the new temple in London had just been established because the devotees had managed to secure a little place, Bury place, and the deities were, heisted. It was an interesting story of how they got the deities. I'll tell the story of how they got the deities. An Indian man had a set of Radha Krishna deities in his home in London. And there was some talk that the Indian man wanted to invite Prabhupada to his home, and he had an idea that he had expressed. He had an idea that he would like to give the deities to Prabhupada because he would worship them nicely, or his followers would worship them nicely. So Prabhupada made a plan. And the plan was he took 3 strong men with him, and they went to the man's home. And in the course of the conversation, there was some idea. Prabhupada brought up the topic. I heard that you had some idea of donating these deities. And he said, Well, I was thinking like that, and Prabhupada nodded to the men, and he said, thank you very much. And they picked up the deities, put them in the back of the van that was already prepared to take them to where they were going. And Prabhupada was, chuckling. No, that's a heist. But the man had a desire, and yet he had some attachment. Prabhupada's relieving of the attachment in a nice way. And so they had this temple in Bury Place where there's Radha Krishna deities, Radha Landaneshwara. They're still being worshipped, not at that place, but at Soho Street. Another place was purchased, the deities removed. So when visiting in London, here's two more Prabhupada stories. One, he made a request while in London to visit Jamuna's residence. Jamuna at that time was residing with Dina Tarani, her dear friend. So, knowing that Prabhupada was coming and knowing that Prabhupada liked cleanliness, she got into a super cleanliness 3-day, making the place spotless. And she was really happy because cleanliness is next to godliness. So Prabhupada came. This is a story I heard this past weekend. And he went straight to a bookshelf, saw on the bookshelf a stapler on top of one of the books, opened up the stapler, and rubbed his finger across where the staples go inside the stapler and showed Jamuna, look at this, and put the stapler back on the top of the book. And she said, and I love Prabhupada all the more. Because that's Jamuna. That's Prabhupada was doing, he was reciprocating with Jamuna in a very loving way. And she knew that's what he was doing. I mean, he could have just said, oh, you cleaned this house so nicely. But he did it in a different way, in a loving way, as a loving father, because that was their relationship. And during that 1971 visit to London, Jamuna was coming in bringing some prasadam, some boga that she had now prasadam she had offered. And Prabhupada asked her, are you teaching the other devotees now that you have learned to cook nicely? And in the other room was Kaushalya, another one of Prabhupada's disciples, Mataji. And she came out from the other room and said, she's not been teaching us to cook, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada then, this is from Satsrup Maharaj's memories, Prabhupada turned to Jamuna and said, if you have something that Krishna has given to you, like cooking, and you don't teach others, you're going to become envious. He didn't explain, but the explanation is, if you have something given to you by Krishna, you're obliged to give it to others. Because if you don't give it to others, what happens? You're in this competitive mode. I want to be better than the others. And somebody starts to excel, and then you become envious because they're excelling. So you want to push them down. That's what envious people do. They don't have to be better than you. Just as soon as they start to rise, you push them down because of enviousness. So take anything that you can think of that's some endowment that Krishna has given to you as a gift, an ability, a talent, a something or a something. Use it in such a way that others are going to benefit from it. Because if you don't, you're putting yourself at risk to become envious instead of a giver of Krishna's mercy. Isn't that a nice story? So those are things not wanted. By diverting attention to so many unwanted things, human energy is spoiled without achievement of spiritual realization, the prime necessity of human life. So here's a nice little illustration. This is Prabhupada from Bhagavad Gita chapter 6. The best means of spiritualization is chanting the holy name of the Lord. And that means do and give to others. Receive and give to others. Simple. Receive and give to others. First starts with receiving, and you try to improve the quality of your receiver, please. And as you do so, give. The material disease is due to hankering after and lording it over material nature. This hankering is due to the interaction of the three modes of nature. And there they are, those three ladies, puppeteers, and people down below. They're thinking, one is thinking I'm the controller, and the other is thinking I'm the laborer, the capitalist and the laborer. But they're neither. They're both being controlled by the modes of nature. Hankering is due to the interactions, or the particular exhibition of our hankering is due to the movements of the modes of nature, and neither the Lord nor the devotees have attachment for such false enjoyment. We're almost done. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse, paraphrasing what Kunti is saying. I offer my respects to he whose treasure is unalloyed devotees, who is devoid of material interest, who is disinterested, and those who are not devotees, who forgives his devotees, and who helps the devotee desiring liberation. Last slide here for this morning. Again, taking the words and the verse and shedding light on them. Those who do not have anything materially speaking, or akinchanas, but possess only you, who have a body of complete knowledge and bliss, are alone your unalloyed devotees. They are the abodes of prema, and are thus like treasures, who should be hidden from everyone. I offer respects to you, who possesses these treasures of the akinchanas. So Krishna is the akinchana Vitaya. He possesses the akinchanas. What? But akinchanas are poor. That is true. The devotees of the Lord do not have wealth arising from the gunas of Maya. They have the Lord, who is devoid of all material enjoyment. Nirvrita Gunavitaya, the Lord's attachment to the akinchana bhaktas was described. Now, its previous verse, his detachment from others is shown, Atmaramaya. If the devotee makes offenses to the Lord does not become angry. He remains peaceful, Shantaya. Showing his mercy to his devotee, he also assists those devotees interested in liberation. Kaivalya Pataye. So it's now 9 o'clock. We've been going for an hour, almost. Let's see if there's some discussion. And from those of you that are coming from some other place besides in this ashram, thank you for coming. It makes the class nicer to have your presence. So thank you for coming. Anyone else? Anyone would like to speak something? I thought so. Okay, go ahead.
These material opulences, this a lot of information I heard. So sometimes, so we've been going out on books and doing book distribution. So we come in contact with all kinds of people.
Good. Good.
So sometimes we have to sort of have affirmation mantra to not want to take shelter of these desires, wanting these things. Not that there's anything wrong with having them, but taking shelter. as opposed to take
Yes, you got it.
So how can we strengthen this conviction to take shelter of Krishna? It's these strong impressions that are
I have a real simple answer. Two simple answers. Chant good japa. What does chant good japa mean? Answer. The holy name is my only shelter. What? What about this and that? What about all the distractions and things that go on in the mind when you're chanting japa? Well, if you chant good japa, you can pay attention and let those things, just like water running down a stream, can run down the stream and your attention doesn't get distracted. Really? Is it possible? Not only possible, that's our assignment. It's certainly possible. So attachment to Krishna is most powerfully experienced through chanting of japa. And when you have chanted good japa, that's your protection. You go out into the public and see stuff. The good, bad, and the ugly. It's not that you can't see it, but it's not like attraction, repulsion. Why? Because there's attachment to Krishna. So how do you get that attachment to Krishna? Chant good japa. Practice. Then comes, definition of what is practice. And you keep going on with that conversation. Another answer, simple. My answer to how-to questions. Sadhu Sangha. And you can unpack that one. What's Sadhu Sangha? What does it look like? So there's characteristics of sadhu. Some of you like reading Prabhupada's books. Most of you like reading Prabhupada's books. You'll find a really, really, 3 times really succinct explanation of Sadhu Sangha in Canto 3, Chapter 25, starting with text 20. It's celebrated as Sadhu Sangastika. So add 8 to 20, and you get to 27. 325, 20 through 27. And that gives the anatomy of Sadhu Sangha. How important it is, what's the qualifications, what happens when you associate, how to associate, and so forth. It's really nice. Please enjoy reading it. Please live it. And so you do Sadhu Sangha, and the how-to is fulfilled. Do it properly. And then it comes to practice again. Anyone else? Yes.
You mentioned that if you have a gift or something that Krishna has trusted you with, that sharing it with others is somewhat of a responsibility.
Yes.
How does one share something with others? It's like, let's say they're not being asked. Is it something that you need to go out of your way to try and share, or is it just not being withholding?
Well, my answer to a question like this is it depends. Depends on you, the circumstance, the other person, the ambience, the mood, the timing. So you may not, but at least, there can be a desire. It's even before the desire comes gratitude to Krishna. You've given me this. Thank you. With not just the words, but the feeling. Now, what would you like me to do with this? And then comes intelligence that discriminates, depends on the circumstance. Or, for example, the last place I was, there was somebody who was really interested in college outreach. So they gave the how to make this message relevant. First comes, the desire, the acknowledgement that this is something that I may not have a great gift from Krishna, but there's a desire because I understand it's the desire of our disciplic succession and our founder Acharya and other persons I look up to. So, and I want to please them. And so carry that in your heart and grow it. And then as it grows, the very process of growing a spiritual desire is the hearing and chanting, and that will clear the coverings and enhance the spiritual desire portion, the remaining portion. And then the desire grows. Now, how do I best utilize this? Then Krishna gives intelligence. The verse 10:10 Bhagavad Gita. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam. Krishna gives the intelligence. How to utilize something that he has given as a gift, and you have this gratitude in your heart that has arisen because of acknowledging something, and you want to use it. Then he'll give intelligence. He'll also give intelligence how when not to use it. The circumstance specific. You, the person, the place, the other individual. Our founder Acharya is an ideal example of a life lesson of he had an understanding of what was expected of him or requested of him by Bhaktisiddhanta, who gave it to him twice, and it wasn't unclear, it was clear. So now he prepared himself, like a lifetime of preparation, so that he could, but even when he was preparing, he was doing. On a smaller scale. But he was doing, and honing his skill, and strengthening his desire, and so forth and so on, and getting greater empowerment to fulfill Mission Impossible. So, like that. Even when there's a seed, you can nurture the seed, and then Krishna will give you intelligence because that's your question, how to convey that gift that Krishna has given you. So both the intelligence and the Icha Shakti and Kriya Shakti in Sanskrit terminology that comes at the beginning of creation. That's a whole other topic. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki Jai.